The house was never meant to be permanent. That was the lie Mark repeated to himself as the moving truck pulled away and the street returned to its unnatural quiet. Just a place to land. A year, maybe 2. Long enough to get back on their feet after the downsizing, the layoffs, the conversations whispered late at night when they thought their son couldn't hear. The neighborhood looked peaceful in daylight. Wide streets, mature trees, houses spaced far enough apart that you didn't feel watched, but close enough that you felt noticed. There were no kids riding bikes, no people sitting on porches, just parked cars that never seemed to move and windows that reflected the sky a little too clearly. The house itself was older but freshly renovated. Beige siding, new roof, fresh paint that smelled faintly chemical even weeks later. Inside, the floors creaked in places that didn't match the layout, like the house had learned different proportions at some point and never quite adjusted. 3 bedrooms upstairs, the smallest one sat at the end of the hall, tucked away like an afterthought. Low ceiling, old carpet, one narrow window facing the side yard where the grass grew thinner the closer it got to the foundation. Caleb chose that room immediately. "I like this one," he said, dropping his backpack on the floor. Jenna hesitated. "It's kind of small, honey." Caleb shrugged. "It feels quiet." Mark didn't like that word, but he said nothing. The first night passed without incident. Caleb slept through until morning, and Jenna allowed herself to relax for the first time since the move. She told herself the anxiety was just stress, new house nerves, residual exhaustion. The second night, Caleb stood in the hallway long after he should have been asleep. Mark noticed him only because the light from the bathroom caught the boy's face in a profile, pale and unmoving. "Caleb?" he asked. "What are you doing up?" Caleb rubbed his eyes. "Dad?" he said carefully. "There's something under my bed." Mark sighed, already tired. "Buddy, it's a new house. Everything sounds weird at first." "It's not a sound." That should have slowed him down. Instead, Mark walked him back to his room, lifted the blanket, and knelt down. He used his phone's flashlight, sweeping it beneath the bed with exaggerated confidence. "See? Nothing there," Mark said. Caleb stared into the darkness a moment longer than made sense. "It was there before," he whispered. Mark smiled, kissed his forehead, and turned off the light. He didn't notice how long Caleb stayed awake. By the third night, Caleb wouldn't lie flat. Jenna found him sitting upright, knees pulled up to his chest, eyes fixed on the narrow gap between the bed frame and the floor. "Sweetheart," she said gently, "you're gonna hurt your back." "It moves when you stop looking," Caleb said. Jenna smiled too quickly. "Your imagination's running wild." Caleb shook his head. "It waits." "For what?" "For me to forget it's there." That night, Mark snapped when Caleb asked to keep the lights on. "Enough," he said, sharper than he meant. "There's no monster under your bed." Caleb looked at him then, really looked. "That's what it says too." On the fourth night, Caleb asked for the door to stay open, then the hallway light, then both. Jenna sat beside him, brushing his hair back. "Why is it so scary?" Caleb swallowed. "Because it knows my name." Jenna laughed softly. "Well, that's impossible." Caleb didn't laugh back. "It asked me how old I am." Her hand paused mid-stroke. "What did you tell it?" 8. His voice dropped. It said that was good, that I'd still fit. Mark checked under his bed again that night. He didn't know why he felt compelled to. Maybe it was the way Caleb wouldn't look at the floor anymore. Maybe it was the way the room smelled faintly damp, like a basement that had never been opened. Nothing had changed, except the carpet. One corner near the wall was crushed flat, like something heavy had pressed there for a very long time. Mark pressed his hand into it. The fibers didn't spring back. Probably the old bed frame, he told himself. Probably. On the 5th night, Caleb screamed. Not a nightmare scream. A scream that cut off mid-breath. Mark and Jenna were out of bed instantly. They burst into Caleb's room and flipped on the light. Caleb stood on the mattress, pressed into the corner, pointing down. "It's closer," he cried. "It didn't go back this time." Mark dragged the bed away from the wall. The space beneath it felt wrong. Not empty, not full, just deeper than it should have been. The light didn't reach the back wall. Jenna knelt and reached under, fingertips brushing the carpet. She recoiled. "It's cold," she whispered. "Why is it cold?" They moved Caleb to their room that night. He didn't sleep. Neither did they. On the 6th night, Caleb insisted on going back. "It doesn't like it when I'm in here," he said quietly, sitting on the edge of the bed. "It says I'm cheating." Jenna frowned. Cheating at what? Caleb shrugged. The waiting part? Mark forced a laugh. "There's nothing under that bed." Caleb's eyes were rimmed red. "It says parents always say that." At 6:42 a.m., Jenna went to wake him for school. Caleb's bed was perfectly made. Too perfectly. The room smelled damp, heavier than before. "Caleb?" she called. No answer. She pulled the covers back. The mattress sagged inward as if something heavy had pressed up from below. Mark dropped to his knees and looked under the bed. The carpet was torn, pulled inward. Thin lines stretched from the edges toward a darkness that no longer behaved like shadow. Caleb was gone. The police arrived within 20 minutes. 2 cruisers at first, then 3 more. The sound of radios and boots filled the hallway, but none of it seemed to reach Caleb's room properly. The air inside felt padded, muted, like sound was being swallowed before it could settle. An officer named Hargreave took the lead. Late 40s, calm voice, careful eyes. "No open windows," he said after the initial sweep. "No signs of forced entry." Jenna stood in the doorway, arms wrapped around herself. He wouldn't run away. Hargreave nodded. Most kids don't. They checked closets, under furniture, the attic, the crawl space beneath the house. Nothing. When Hargreave finally knelt beside the bed, Mark felt his stomach tighten. The officer didn't reach under immediately. He stared first. Then he leaned down and shined his flashlight into the gap. The beam didn't behave right. Instead of spreading, it narrowed like the darkness was pressing back. Hargreave straightened quickly. "What?" Mark asked. "What did you see?" Hargreave shook his head. "Probably nothing." But his voice had lost its confidence. The dogs arrived an hour later, 3 of them. They pulled eagerly at their leashes until they reached Caleb's room. Then they stopped. One whimpered. Another refused to cross the threshold entirely. The handler tried coaxing them forward, then tugging them gently. "They don't like this room," he muttered. Jenna's voice shook. "Why?" The handler hesitated. Sometimes they just don't. But Mark noticed how he avoided looking under the bed. That afternoon, an officer measured the room. Mark didn't understand why until he saw the look on her face. She measured the length, then the width, then the height beneath the bed. She measured it twice. "Is there supposed to be a crawl space under here?" she asked. "No," Mark said. "The house is slab on grade." She frowned. "This doesn't make sense." "How much space is there?" Jenna asked. The officer hesitated. "More than there should be." That night they were told not to sleep in the house. They stayed at a motel off the highway, the kind with flickering ice machines and curtains that never fully closed. Jenna stared at the wall all night. Mark watched the door. At 2:17 a.m., Jenna spoke without turning her head. "He said it waited." Mark swallowed. "What?" "Caleb. He said it waited." Mark didn't answer. Neither of them slept. The search stretched into days, then weeks. The house was torn apart, walls opened, floorboards lifted. Nothing beneath Caleb's room explained the measurements. No tunnels, no voids, no evidence of collapse. And yet, the space beneath the bed remained wrong. An officer finally said it out loud. "There's more room under there than there is between the joists." Mark snapped. "That's impossible." The officer met his eyes. "That's what we keep running into." After 2 weeks, the lead detective changed. Detective Rowe. Younger, sharper, less patient. She listened carefully as Mark repeated everything Caleb had said. When he finished, she didn't dismiss it. She asked, "Did he ever say what it wanted?" Mark hesitated. Jenna answered instead. "He said it asked his age." Rowe nodded slowly. "Anything else?" Mark's voice cracked. "He said it said he'd still fit." Rowe closed her notebook. "That's interesting," she said quietly. "How?" Jenna demanded. Rowe looked at the floor. "Children go missing in houses like this sometimes," she said. "Almost always around the same age." "What age?" Mark asked. Rowe hesitated. "Before they outgrow their beds." They weren't allowed back in the house for nearly a month. When they returned, it felt smaller. The ceilings lower, the walls closer. Caleb's room smelled worse. Damp, earthy. The bed was still there, untouched. Mark couldn't stop himself. He knelt and reached under. His fingers brushed the carpet. Then nothing. Not empty space. Absence. His hand went farther than it should have. Then something brushed back. Not a hand. Not a claw. Just pressure. Like something confirming he was still too large. Mark jerked his arm back and screamed. That night the first sound came. A soft scraping from beneath the bed. Jenna heard it too. They stood frozen in the hallway. Scrape. Pause. Scrape. "It's moving," Jenna whispered. Mark shook his head. No, we're done." They packed that night. Left furniture behind. Left the bed. They never looked under it again. The house went back on the market. Fresh paint, new carpet, a new bread bought in by the realtor. The listing photos showed a bright, cheerful child's room. No mention of the space beneath. The next family moved in 6 months later. They had a son, 7 years old. He chose the small bedroom at the end of the hall. The first night, he slept fine. The second night, he stood in the hallway rubbing his eyes. "Mom?" he asked. "There's something under my bed." She smiled. "It's just a new house, baby. Go back to sleep." They found Lewis's harness first. Not tangled, not torn, not dropped like it had been ripped away in panic. It hung from the scaffold cross-braced like someone had put it away neatly after a shift. Every strap buckled, lanyard clipped, hard hat set on top like a careful little monument. No blood, no footprints. Just stale rainwater left over from the night storm, dripping from the helmet's brim, even though the morning sky above St. Bridget's was clear. And when the wind turned, the helmet tapped softly against the pole. Across the street, high on the northeast corner of the church roof, a gargoyle stared down at the scene. Its long mouth was carved open like a spout, and it looked like it had never been moved at all. 2 days earlier, it was sitting on a pallet in a restoration tent. St. Bridget's sat where the city got old in a way you can taste. Not the tourist kind of old, not the historic district kind with plaques and gift shops. The honest kind. Stone that sweats in summer, mortar that powders in winter, window frames that creak like they're thinking, a building that doesn't just occupy space but seems to claim it. From the sidewalk, it looked like a postcard left out in bad weather. Gothic stone, narrow windows, a roofline bristling with carved figures. Gargoyles. Not one or two, a ring of them, spaced along corners, ledges, and parapets. Their faces turned outward toward the street, frozen in expressions that weren't quite anger and weren't quite warning. Some had horns, some had wings, some had mouths shaped like drains. And on the northeast corner above the old choir loft sat the one the crew nicknamed Guttermouth. It wasn't the ugliest, it wasn't the biggest. It was the one that made people stop joking after they looked at it for too long. Its eyes weren't expressive. They weren't cartoonish. They were carved in a way that suggested attention, like it had been watching the street for a very long time and still hadn't blinked. The restoration lead was Amelia Mercer, early 30s, hair usually tied back, clipboard always in hand, and the kind of person who could look at a crack in a stone and tell you the year winter started winning. She brought a small crew. Meena Patel, stone conservator, careful hands, steady voice, the kind of calm that made everyone else feel a little sloppy. Derek Shaw, rigger and scaffolder, built like a forklift, laughed at problems until they stopped being funny. And Jace Nolan, photographer and drone operator, always filming, always narrating, always trying to turn life into a story. The first morning, the custodian met them at the heavy front doors. He was thin, gray-haired, and carried keys that clinked like small bells. He watched them unload gear, then looked up at the roofline. His gaze lingered on Guttermouth. "You here for the corner?" he said. Amelia nodded. "Northeast spout. We'll remove, stabilize, and reinstall." The custodian's expression didn't change, but his eyes did that thing old eyes do when they've seen the same kind of trouble more than once. "Don't leave it off overnight," he said. Derek chuckled. "We don't leave anything loose overnight. Safety's the job." The custodian shook his head slightly. "Not loose," he said. "Off." Jace lifted his camera. "Is this where you tell us the church is cursed?" The custodian looked at him for a long moment. Then he said flat and tired, "Some things aren't curses." He pointed up at Guttermouth. "Some things are solutions." Amelia gave the kind of smile that fits in paperwork. "We'll be careful," she said. The custodian's keys jingled once. "Be fast," he said. Then he stepped back inside, and the doors closed behind him with a sound like the building settling. The scaffold went up over 2 days. Steel frames, cross braces, toe boards, tie-ins drilled carefully into stone. It made the whole job feel controlled, like a problem with edges. On day 3, they climbed. Up close, Guttermouth looked worse than it had from the ground. A crack ran along its back, thin as thread but deep enough to catch water, deep enough to let winter wedge itself in year after year. Mina ran a gloved finger along it and frowned. Freeze-thaw damage, she said. But the base? She leaned closer to the seat where Guttermouth crouched. The stone beneath wasn't just stained, it was polished in a perfect circle, like the gargoyle had been pressed into the same place again and again, returned the way you return something important to its holder. Around that seat, 8 small iron pins were embedded into the stone, evenly spaced like compass points. Mina's voice went quiet. That's not decorative. Derek shrugged. Old building, old methods. Amelia kept looking. Between the stones near the seat, the mortar was darker than the rest. Not grime dark. Mixed dark, like someone had added ash. She swallowed. Okay, clean removal, slow, no shortcuts. They wrapped the straps. Derek tightened the rigging. Jace filmed from a safe plank, zooming in on Gutterface's mouth. Smile, he muttered, but the joke sounded weak at this height. As the straps clinched tight, a single drop slid from Guttermouth's open mouth and fell. It hit the plank with a soft tick. Mina blinked. Did it just drip? Amelia looked up at the sky. It didn't rain. Derek said, trapped moisture? Jace whispered, that drop looked dark. Amelia started to tell him to stop narrating doom, but Derek gave the signal. The chain hoist groaned, stone creaked, and Guttermouth lifted. For a heartbeat, everything went still. Then the gargoyle cleared the seat, and beneath it, set flush into the stone, was a dull metal plate. Lead, maybe? Carved into it was a simple mark, a circle, a line, and an eye shape scratched deep like someone wanted it to outlive language. Mina's voice dropped. That's not structural. Amelia stared. No, it's not. Inside the church, somewhere behind stone and wood, something made a low, dry sound. Not a voice, not a sigh. A scrape, like fingernails on the underside of a lid. Amelia forced her work voice back into place. Document it, she said. Photograph the plate, photograph the pins, then tarp it. We do not leave it exposed. They lowered Guttermouth into the restoration tent and covered the corner seat with a thick tarp, weighed down with sandbags like they were bracing against a storm that hadn't arrived yet. That should have been the end of the day. It wasn't. Amelia handed the custodian a spare sight radio that morning, mostly to keep him looped in if anything went wrong. It felt like a normal precaution. By late afternoon, it didn't. They were still on the scaffold double-checking tie-ins after the removal when the tapping started. Not from the roof, not from the street, from the scaffold frame itself. Amelia froze mid-step. Mina stared at the metal brace like she expected to see knuckles on the other side. Derek frowned. Wind? But his eyes had narrowed, and his hands had gone tense on the rail. Jace, of course, lifted his camera. Okay, he whispered. That's actually creepy. The tapping stopped, then came again closer, on the cross brace near Derek's knee. Derek crouched and checked the clamp. It's tight, he muttered. He looked up. Across a small gap on the church's stone ledge near the corner seat, something seemed to be crouched. Not a person, not a pigeon. A suggestion of weight on a point. A silhouette that didn't belong to any known shape. Jace's autofocus chirped softly, hunting. The silhouette wasn't in focus, but the metal beneath it creaked in a way that said it was real enough to sit. Amelia's throat tightened. Back down, she said quietly. Now. Derek started to stand. The clamp at his side twisted, not from rust, not from strain, like a hand had turned it. The brace snapped loose. Derek's boot slid. For a 6 second, he pitched sideways into open air. His harness caught him hard, swinging him into the frame with a grunt that punched the breath out of him. Amelia lunged, grabbed his vest, and hauled him back. Derek landed on the plank, chest heaving. Mina's face had gone pale. Jace kept filming, but his mouth was open like he couldn't decide if he wanted proof or prayer. The silhouette on the ledge was gone, and the tapping had stopped. Amelia stared at the clamp. Clamps don't open themselves. She didn't say it out loud because she could hear the building listening. They shut down early. Derek insisted the clamp must have been faulty, but his hand shook when he said it. Amelia wrote an incident report with words that didn't invite questions. That night, a drizzle came in off the lake. Jace went back. He told himself it was for B-roll, for continuity, for the documentary that lived in his head, the one where the camera made things less frightening because it made them explainable. He stood across the street under an awning filming the northeast corner. The tarp over the seat sat still. The sandbags held. Everything looked contained. Then the tarp lifted slightly. Not flapped. Lifted like something beneath it had pressed up against it and tested its weight. Jace lowered the camera slowly. His stomach went cold. At the curb near the alley, a contractor's truck idled, headlights on. A man stood by it smoking, shoulders hunched against the drizzle. Jace recognized him. Lewis, one of Derek's day laborers. Lewis nodded at Jace. "You filming again?" Jace forced a grin. "Always." Lewis exhaled smoke, eyes fixed on the church. "This building feels like it watches." Jace laughed too fast. "It's got gargoyles. That's like their whole thing." Lewis nodded toward the northeast corner. "Where that one went," he said. Jace's smile stiffened. Lewis flicked ash. "My uncle told me a story. Old churches got stones that keep things in." Jace swallowed. "Keep things in?" Lewis shrugged. He said if you moved them, you put them back the same day. He glanced at the tarp. "Or," he began. Jace felt his mouth go dry. "Or what?" Lewis stared at the curb like he didn't want to see his own words. "You don't want the or," he said. Then he lifted his flashlight and jerked his chin toward the scaffold gate. "Derek asked me to check a few tie-ins tonight," he added. "Quick in and out." Jace watched him walk in. He wanted to call out. Wanted to say, "Don't go near the corner. Don't test the building." But Jace didn't want to sound crazy. So he did what he always did. He filmed. In the audio later, beneath the drizzle and the faint traffic hum, there was a sound. 3 soft taps. Not on metal. Not on stone. Like knuckles on wood. Like something inside the church was knocking from the wrong side of a door. Lewis never came out. Lewis didn't show the next morning. His truck was still in the alley, keys on the seat. His lunch cooler sat in the cab untouched. Derek swore under his breath. He wouldn't just no call. Amelia called the temp agency. They had minimal paperwork, a nickname, a phone number that went straight to nothing. Mina said quietly, "Convenient." Jace kept his mouth shut. He had footage of Lewis walking in. He had audio of the taps. And he didn't know how to admit he'd watched a man step toward a corner he didn't understand. They did a site sweep. Basement, sanctuary, storage rooms. St. Bridget's swallowed sound. Even their footsteps seemed to die quickly, as if the building didn't like echoes. They checked the choir loft because it lined up with the northeast corner. Mina paused at an arched window. "This window faces the seat," she whispered. Amelia frowned. So? Mina ran a finger along the interior stone ledge. It was worn in a way that didn't match age alone. Scratched, notched, like fingernails had dragged across it. Jace's skin prickled. Mina pointed at the wall near the window. A faint vertical line ran from the ceiling to floor, darker than the stone around it, like a water stain. But when Mina touched it, it was dry. Amelia stared. Mina whispered, "That looks like a boundary." Jace murmured, "A threshold." Derek scoffed softly. "It's a church. It's all thresholds." Amelia didn't answer, because the air here felt wrong. Not spooky, specific. Like this spot belonged to a rule. They were halfway back down the stairs when the first interior tap came. Not from the scaffold, not from outside. From the choir loft itself. It sounded like it came from the wooden railing, like something on the other side had knocked, careful and patient. Amelia stopped. Derek turned, jaw tight. Wind in the rafters? Mina stared up the stairwell, eyes wide. That was measured. Jace lifted his camera. "We should leave." And then they heard it again, closer. Tapping on the stairwell's corner post. The kind of post you'd rest your hand on when you leaned around a tight corner. Amelia's throat tightened, because the tapping wasn't random. It wasn't the building settling, it was the building communicating. Jace whispered, "It's like it knows where we are." Mina's voice trembled. "Or it knows where the corners are." They climbed back up slowly, because the worst thing about fear in a place like that is how it makes your brain tell you two opposite things at once. Run, and also look. When they reached the choir loft, the air felt colder. Not dramatically, just enough that breath felt different. The railing ran along the edge, overlooking the sanctuary. The corners of the loft were sharp and dark, the kind of shadows that felt like they'd been there longer than the wood. Mina stepped toward the arched window, careful. Amelia stayed near the stair entrance, and Derek hovered behind them, hands flexing like he wanted something solid to do. Jace filmed without talking. Then a sound came from the loft's far corner. Not tapping. A small creak, like weight settling onto wood. They turned. In the loft's far corner, perched on the railing's corner joint, was a suggestion of a crouched shape. Not fully solid, but real enough that the wood beneath it bent slightly. Jace's autofocus hunted again, unable to decide if it was seeing shadow or something that belonged in the world. Amelia swallowed. Nobody move. The shape didn't lunge. It didn't attack. It simply existed on the corner like it had always belonged there. Then it did something worse. It wasn't fast. It wasn't violent. It simply arrived on the next corner. Not moving through open space, not crossing the loft. Just present, one corner closer. Mina's hand flew to her mouth. Derek whispered, "What the hell?" Jace's voice came out thin. It didn't move, it just changed places. Amelia's heart hammered. She understood something then with sick clarity. It wasn't stalking them. It wasn't hunting them like an animal. It was playing a game the building knew how to play. Corners, perches, points where something could stand, and the church was full of them. Mina backed toward Amelia, whispering, "We can't watch all corners at once." Derek scanned the loft, breathing hard. "Then we watch the nearest ones." Jace whispered, "That's the problem. It can arrive closer than we can turn." The shape arrived again. Now it perched on the corner of the stairwell post behind them. Close enough that the air around it felt colder. Close enough that the wood groaned like it didn't like being touched by whatever that weight was. Derek stepped forward instinctively like he could block it with his body. The shape tilted its head slightly, not toward Derek, toward Jace, toward the camera, and Jace felt it like a pressure behind his eyes. He swallowed. "It sees me," Mina whispered. "It sees the witness." Amelia forced her voice steady. "We're leaving. Slow." They backed toward the stairs, moving like you move away from a dog that isn't sure if it's about to bite. The shape arrived on the corner of the railing to their left, then the corner of the railing to their right. It wasn't chasing. It was surrounding, cutting off angles, holding them in the center where there were no more corners for them to claim, no perches for them to stand on, just open floor, just people. Amelia's mind screamed, "If it can only stand on perches, then why does it want us here?" Then she understood. Because the center made them helpless. In the center, you can't press your back to a wall. You can't guard one side. You're always exposed to corners. You're always in the middle of a room full of watch points. Jace whispered, "It wants me to keep looking." Amelia said quietly, "Then don't." Jace blinked hard. "If I stop looking, it gets closer." Mina's voice broke. "If you keep looking, it's already got you." Derek made a decision. He reached into his tool belt and pulled out a small flashlight, not a phone light, a real one. He clicked it on and aimed it hard at the nearest corner where the shape perched. The beam hit it. The shape didn't vanish, but the wood beneath it creaked in protest like the light made it heavier. Derek said, voice shaking, "You want corners? Here." He swung the beam to the next corner, then the next, keeping it lit, keeping it watched. Amelia grabbed Mina's arm. "Now move." They took the stairs down, one step at a time, Derek behind them keeping the corners lit like a man trying to hold back a tide. Jace filmed without thinking, because his hands didn't know what else to do. And as they descended, the tapping followed. Not above, not behind. Beside them, at every landing, on every corner post, 3 soft taps, like a rhythm, like a reminder, like the building itself was saying, "You can't outrun this, you can only close it." They reached the sanctuary floor. The tapping stopped. Amelia's chest heaved. "It can't fully enter when sealed," she murmured, piecing it all together. Mina nodded, tears in eyes. "It can't enter like a body." Derek swallowed hard. Then how did it twist the clamp? The custodian's voice answered from the entryway. He'd been standing there the whole time, pale and still. "With the lid lifted," he said, "it can touch what touches the corner." He stepped forward, eyes locked on Amelia. "It can't walk in like a person," he continued, "but it can press through. A hand through a crack, a weight onto a perch, a twist onto a clamp." Jace whispered, "And it wants a witness?" The custodian nodded once. "It keeps looking until someone stays." They met in the sacristy under dim lights that buzzed faintly. The custodian brought out a binder, old paper, smudged ink, dust that smelled like damp wood and time. "Church records," he said, and the words sounded like he didn't like them. Mina opened it. Inside were photos, black and white, taped in with yellow adhesive. Restorations, roof repairs, scaffold builds. In every single photo on the northeast corner, Guttermouth remained in place. Even when other gargoyles were removed, even when the roofline was stripped, even when scaffolding wrapped the whole corner like a cage, Guttermouth stayed seated. Mina flipped the page. A newspaper clipping. Restoration halted after accident. Another. Worker missing. Search continues. Dates marched through decades. Jace's voice came out thin. "This happened before?" The custodian nodded, more than once. Mina found handwritten notes in the margins, pressed hard enough to scar the page. Do not remove northeast spout after dusk. If moved, return before nightfall. If cracked, reseal with witness. Amelia's eyes locked on that last line. Reseal with witness. Mina whispered, "It matches the Latin." Derek rubbed his face hard. "This is insane." The custodian leaned forward, voice low. "Insane is thinking old people wrote this for fun." Mina flipped again. A sketch of the northeast corner base. 8 pins, a lead plate. In the center, a carved depression shaped like a palm. A place for a living hand. A second sketch showed 1 pin highlighted. A note beside it. The key pin must be present. And in the drawing, that 1 pin had a tiny detail the others didn't. A small etched notched mark. Mina pointed. "See that? That's how you know it's the key. It's not identical." Amelia's jaw tightened. "So if that pin goes missing?" The custodian finished quietly. "The grid doesn't lock right." Derek's eyes narrowed. "We didn't move any pins." Mina looked up, face tight. "Not intentionally." Jay swallowed, because he remembered the night before. He hadn't wanted to say it. Now he had to. "I saw Lewis," Jay said quietly. "He went to the site. I filmed it." Derek's head snapped toward him. "You were here last night?" Jace nodded once, shame heating his face. "He said you asked him to check tie-ins?" Derek's mouth opened and closed. He didn't deny it. Because he had told Lewis to check tie-ins. He just hadn't told him to do it alone at night. Mina's voice went cold. Then he could have touched the corner. Amelia's mind raced. And if he touched the corner? She didn't finish because the thought felt like swallowing glass. They searched again. Tool bags, pockets, work tables, the restoration tent. Derek found it first. Not in the toolbox, not on the floor. In Lewis's hard hat sitting on the shelf by the scaffold gate like it had been placed there for discovery. Derek lifted it, hand shaking. Inside, taped to the sweatband, was a small iron pin, blackened, old, and it had the same tiny notch mark from the binder sketch. Mina's voice was barely a whisper. "That's the key pin." Jay swallowed. So it took him and left the key? The custodian stared at the pin like it was a tooth. "It doesn't take," he said softly. "It keeps." Amelia looked down at the binder again. Her eyes landed on a photo near the back. An old crew on a scaffold, smiling like any other job. One person in the photo wasn't smiling. A woman stood near the corner brace, hand resting on the northeast base like she was steadying herself. In a later photo, decades newer, that same woman's face appeared again, not as a worker, as a new gargoyle carved beside Guttermouth. Mina's breath caught. "Those aren't memorials." The custodian's voice was low. "They're anchors." Amelia's throat tightened. "A witness remains, not in memory, in stone." Jace whispered, "So, putting it back?" The custodian nodded. "Putting it back closes the lid." Mina added, voice trembling, "But resealing requires a witness." Derek's face twisted. "No." Amelia's eyes dropped to the hand-shaped depression in the sketch. A palm print in lead. A place for someone to stay. And Amelia understood the cruel math of it. If they didn't reseal it, it would keep pressing into the world through the open seam. And it wouldn't choose people who would be missed. It would choose the invisible, the undocumented, the ones the city could swallow quietly. Amelia stood. "We put it back," she said. "Tonight?" Mina whispered. Derek shook his head. "Storm's coming." Amelia's voice went firm. Then we do it before it arrives." Jace looked at her. "And the witness?" Amelia didn't answer. Not yet. Because once you say a sentence like that out loud, it becomes real. Outside, thunder muttered in the distance. And somewhere above them, deep in the roofline, 3 soft taps sounded again, like a countdown. By the time they climbed, dusk had turned the sky bruised purple. Wind came off the lake in sudden hard breaths. Derek triple-checked every strap. Mina carried the key pin in the pouch inside her jacket like it could vanish if it saw daylight. Jace filmed without talking now. Amelia led, because leadership wasn't just clipboards. Sometimes it was being the first body where fear liked to stand. They reached the platform near the northeast corner. The tarp over the corner seat fluttered. Sandbags shifted slightly. Amelia's stomach tightened. On the scaffold joint to their left, something perched. Not fully solid, but real enough to make the metal creak. A hunched suggestion. A presence with edges like broken architecture. It didn't leap at them. It didn't sprint. It simply existed there, watching like it had time. And it did, because it didn't need to chase. It could arrive. Mina whispered, "Don't look away." Derek breathed, "We can't watch everything." The presence shifted, not through open space, perch to perch. It appeared on the next brace, closer to the corner seat. The metal groaned under a weight that shouldn't exist. Amelia kept her voice steady. "Hoist, now." Derek signaled to the crew below. Guttermouth rose on the chain hoist, slow and heavy, swinging slightly in the wind. Lightning flickered far off. The presence angled its head toward the rising gargoyle, like it recognized the lid returning. Then it moved again. It appeared on the stone ledge directly above the corner seat, blocking it, claiming the point like it owned the corner. Jace's breathing went shallow. Mina's hands shook. Amelia stared at the lead plate beneath the tarp, knowing what was there. The eye mark, the handprint, the lock. They were close, too close. Then the presence did something worse. It turned its attention towards Jace, toward the camera, toward the witness. And Jace felt it like pressure behind his eyes. The presence shifted again. It appeared on the cross brace beside Jace's shoulder rig, close enough that the scaffold creaked and the air turned colder. Jace froze, eyes wide, voice cracking. "It wants me." Amelia understood instantly. This wasn't random. It didn't hunger for bodies. It hungered for attention that stays, for eyes that remain, for a witness. Mina whispered, trembling. "Once it fixes on the witness, it won't care about anything else." And that was the only opening they were going to get. Derek shouted over the wind, "Lift faster!" Amelia snapped, "Steady, Derek, don't swing it." Mina clutched the key pin. "I have to reach the grid." Amelia nodded. "Do it." Mina crawled forward, careful, moving like she was crossing thin ice. The presence shifted to the next joint as if it could cut her off, but it hesitated, because it had fixed on Jace. Because once it chose the witness, everything else became background. It didn't care about the mortar. It didn't care about the pin. It cared about the one who kept looking. Mina slid into the opening Amelia created by standing between Jace and the presence. Amelia didn't move fast. She moved deliberate. She placed her body in the line of attention like she was stepping between a falling beam and a worker who didn't see it coming. The presence leaned toward Amelia like it didn't like its view being blocked. Amelia's voice came out low and steady. "You can't cross while it's sealed," she said. The presence didn't answer. It simply waited on the brace inches from her. "But with the lid lifted," Amelia continued, "you can touch what touches the corner." The scaffold creaked softly, like the building itself had reacted to the words. Mina whispered behind her, "It's listening." Amelia's voice dropped. "Then listen." She looked at Derek. "Hoist into position," she ordered. Derek's eyes were wet, jaw clenched. "Amelia." "Do it," she snapped. Derek signaled. Guttermouth rose higher, steadier, the chains humming with tension. Mina reached the grid. She pulled the tarp back just enough to expose the ring of pins. She jammed the key pin into its slot. It slid in with a soft final click. The ring was whole again, the seal geometry restored. Lightning flickered closer. Thunder rolled like a low growl. Derek guided Guttermouth down. Stone hovered inches above the base. Amelia knelt. Rain began as a few heavy drops. She pulled the tarp away completely. The lead plate gleamed dull in the dying light. The eye marks scratched deep. In the center, the carved depression waited like a palm-shaped lock. Amelia stared at it. Because now it wasn't theory. Now it was a choice shaped like a hand. Mina's voice cracked. "Amelia?" Derek shook his head hard. "No." Jace whispered, "It doesn't have to be you." Amelia looked at him. Her gaze was clear and tired and steady in a way that hurt. "It will be someone," she said quietly. "And it already chose you." Jace's eyes filled. "Amelia." Amelia placed her hand into the lead handprint. Cold shot up her arm like winter. Her breath caught. Mina whispered, broken, "Say it." Amelia closed her eyes once, then spoke, voice steady despite the storm. "The Guardian keeps watch." The presence on the perch stilled. The air tightened like something listening leaned closer. Amelia swallowed and spoke the second line. "And the witness remains." Something changed. Not a gust. A lock turning. The lead under Amelia's palm warmed for a heartbeat, then went colder than before. Mina packed the ash salt mortar into the seam around the plate, pressing it hard. Derek lowered Guttermouth the final inch. Stone met stone with a heavy final sound. The pins aligned. The lid sat. The threshold became intact again. The church exhaled. The presence flinched, not in pain, in refusal. It leaned forward like it wanted to cross, wanted to enter, wanted to claim the world, but it couldn't. It was sealed out. So it did the only thing it could. It retreated. Not walking, not running. Perch by perch. It appeared on the corner ledge, then the next brace, then the next, slipping away across the roofline like a thought losing focus, until it was gone. The wind eased slightly. Rain thickened into a steady curtain. Mina grabbed Amelia's shoulder. "Amelia, pull your hand away." Amelia tried. Her fingers didn't lift. Her palm felt fused to the lead like it had become the plate's missing piece. Her voice came out strained. "It's locked." Derek made a broken sound, half sob, half growl. "No." Amelia turned her head slightly, as much as she could. She met Mina's gaze. Her gaze was calm in a way that hurt. "It needed a witness," Amelia whispered. Mina shook her head violently. "There has to be another way." Amelia's lips twitched, almost a sad smile. "City forgets," she murmured. Jay stepped forward, shaking. "Amelia." Amelia looked at him, her voice softened, almost kind. "Keep telling stories," she whispered. "And don't keep looking at corners you don't understand." Rain ran down Amelia's sleeve. Her wrist stiffened. Then her forearm heavy. Her shoulder tightened. Not painful, just becoming still. Becoming placed. Mina sobbed, pressing her forehead against Amelia's shoulder like she could warm her back into human shape. Derek pounded the scaffold pole once, anger useless and loud in the rain. Jace filmed one last time, tears on his cheeks, camera shaking like a heartbeat. Lightning flashed, and in that bright frame of reality, Amelia's posture matched the carvings in the binder photos. A crouch shaped to the corner, a mouth beginning to open like a spout, a witness becoming part of the architecture, the bargain completing. When the storm finally eased, Amelia was quiet, still kneeling, still holding the line, still remaining. The city did what it always does. Lewis's name never made the news. The restoration report filed under unexpected structural issues and personal incident. People used soft words so the truth would fit on a form. Derek quit contracting within a month. Mina stopped taking church jobs. Jace tried to upload the footage. Every time the camera frame caught the lead plate, the file glitched, pixelated, corrupted, like the world itself refused to be documented cleanly. But one frame survived, a single still image sharp as a knife. It showed St. Bridget's under a gray sky. Guttermouth sat at the northeast corner like it always had, and beside it was a new gargoyle, cleaner stone, sharper edges, a human-like face carved into a watchful shape, a woman's face, a mouth open like a spout, eyes carved into attention. People passed beneath without looking up, because most people don't. 3 weeks later, the custodian unlocked the sacristy drawer to file the final note. The binder had been kept there the whole time, locked, the key never leaving his ring. He opened it and found a new page that hadn't been there before. Fresh ink, neat handwriting. A line written as if someone had just stepped away from the pen. The lid is seated. The witness remains. Do not remove after dusk. Do not test the corner. The custodian stared at the handwriting. It matched Amelia's. And on the page beneath it, pressed into the paper like a fingerprint, was a faint smudge of gray dust. Stone dust. If you stand across the street from St. Bridget's on a rainy night and look up at the northeast corner, you can see both gargoyles. And sometimes, when the wind is right, you can hear 3 soft taps from high above. Not a warning, not anymore. A reminder that the guardian keeps watch, and the witness remains. The necklace arrived without explanation. It was waiting on the kitchen table when Claire Hawthorne came home from work, sitting among the mail like it had always belonged there. Brown paper, twine pulled tight, no return address, no note, just her name, Claire Hawthorne. It was written carefully in neat black ink, not rushed, not decorative, patient. Claire stood there longer than she meant to, staring at it. She told herself it was probably a mistake, a misdelivery, something meant for someone else in the building. She didn't put it back down, and that was the first mistake. Inside the wrapping paper was a velvet box, black and worn thin at the corners. When she opened it, she found the necklace coiled neatly inside. Dark silver chain, thick links, seamless. At its center hung a black stone, oval and smooth, dull in a way that made it hard to focus on. It didn't shine, it didn't reflect. It seemed to drink in the light around it. Claire lifted it. It was heavier than it looked. Not uncomfortably so, just enough to notice. Just enough to remember. She didn't feel afraid, she felt curious, and curiosity, as it turned out, was enough. That evening, Claire showed the necklace to her family. Daniel, her husband, turned it over in his hands. "Feels old," he said. Like, really old. Their daughter Lily thought it was beautiful. Their son Noah stood in the doorway and said nothing. When Claire lifted the chain toward her neck, Noah spoke. "Don't put it on." Everyone laughed. Claire smiled and told him not to be silly. It was just jewelry. Maybe Daniel had ordered it and forgotten. The chain was cool against her skin. The stone settled just above her collarbone. The necklace slid into place with a faint sound. Not metal, more like pressure easing, as if something had finally settled where it belonged. Claire touched it absently and smiled. Noah stepped backward. That night, Claire slept without moving. Daniel noticed because she always shifted in her sleep, always stole the blankets, always murmured half-formed thoughts. This time she lay flat on her back, hands resting over her stomach, breathing slow and perfectly even. Daniel reached out and touched her arm. Her eyes opened instantly. "Yes?" she said. No grogginess, no confusion. Then she just closed them again. In the morning, she didn't remember the exchange. She said she hadn't dreamed. She wore the necklace to work. She wore it to bed. She wore it in the shower. When Lily asked why she hadn't taken it off, Claire shrugged. "I forgot." By the third day, Claire stopped humming while she cooked. By the fourth, she stopped talking to herself. By the fifth, she stopped reacting when people entered the room. She listened, watched. When spoken to, she paused before answering, like she needed a moment to find the right response. Daniel noticed, but explained it away. Stress, work, fatigue. Noah watched closely. He noticed how often his mother touched a stone in her throat. How sometimes she stared into space, eyes unfocused, as if listening to something far away. On the sixth night, Lily hugged her from behind and froze. "Mom, your neck looks weird." The chain had sunk slightly into Claire's skin. Not enough to bleed, enough to disappear. They tried to remove it that night. Daniel searched for a clasp. There wasn't one. No seam, no break, just continuous metal. Soap didn't help, oil didn't help, warm water didn't help. When Daniel reached for tools, Claire pulled away sharply. "Don't," she said. The word was flat, final. Daniel stepped back, startled. Claire blinked, her expression softening. "I'm sorry, I just don't like that." Noah whispered, "It doesn't want to come off." No one answered him. That night, Daniel woke to the sound of whispering. Claire was speaking in her sleep. Not words, not quite. A low murmur with rhythm, but no language. Daniel recorded it, and when he listened later, the audio distorted near the end. Claire's voice slowed, stretched. Underneath it was another sound. Breathing, slow, content. Noah saw it first. Claire stood in the hallway, staring at herself in the mirror. Her reflection lagged. When she lifted her hand, the reflection followed a moment too late. When she blinked, the reflection corrected itself. Claire smiled at Noah like nothing had happened. He locked his door that night. By the end of the second week, Claire stopped initiating conversation. She answered when spoken to. She ate when food was placed in front of her. She slept. She did not react. Doctors found nothing wrong. Blood work normal, brain scans inconclusive. "She's responsive," one doctor said. "Just very quiet." Daniel stayed up late searching. Antique forms, obscure collectors, old scanned documents. He found a reference buried in a digitized journal. No photos, no illustrations, just a line. "The necklace feeds on the animating force. When the vessel is emptied, it releases." Another line followed, handwritten in the margin. "It does not kill, it finishes." Daniel stopped breathing for a moment. Claire's eyes stopped tracking movement. She stopped reacting to pain. She sat for hours unmoving, breathing slow and steady. The necklace had sunk completely into her skin now, the chain no longer visible in places. On the final night, Claire did not come to dinner. They found her sitting upright in bed, eyes open, staring at the wall. Her breathing was steady, too steady. Daniel touched her face, and she didn't react. The necklace loosened, not suddenly, gently. It slid free of her skin and fell onto the bedspread with a dull, heavy sound. Claire slumped forward, unconscious, but alive. Claire never woke up. Her body healed, her breathing stayed steady, her heart was strong. The doctors called it a coma. They couldn't explain the absence of higher brain activity. The necklace was gone. Not broken, not cut. Gone. Weeks later, Daniel found the velvet box missing from the closet. No signs of forced entry, no explanation, just absence. Somewhere else, someone would come to find a small package waiting. Brown paper, twine, a name written carefully on the front, and a necklace that was very patient. It doesn't kill, it finishes. The Harker family didn't move into a haunted house. If they had, the story would be easier to tell. There were no warning signs from neighbors, no strange smells, no cold spots, no unexplained noises in the walls. The house was ordinary in the way most houses are. 2 stories, a narrow hallway, a staircase in the center that divided everything cleanly in half. Aaron Harker liked it immediately. It felt manageable, predictable. Kyle liked the garage and the way the backyard caught the afternoon sun. Their daughters reacted differently. Leela, 12, understood what it meant to leave something behind. She unpacked slowly, carefully, as if rushing would make the move permanent. She didn't dislike the house, she just didn't trust it yet. Samantha, 11, ran through it like it was already hers. She claimed rooms out loud. She declared the upstairs landing the best spot. She treated the move like an adventure instead of a loss. Nothing strange happened in the first weeks. They unpacked. They argued about furniture placement. They ate pizza on the floor because no one could find the plates. The house stayed quiet. And that's important. Because the first strange thing didn't happen at night. It didn't happen during a storm. It didn't happen when anyone was scared. It happened during a game. It was a Saturday afternoon. The kind that feels endless when you're a kid. Samantha stood in the hallway, bored, twisting the hem of her shirt. "Hide and seek?" she announced. Leela didn't even look up from her phone. "It's just us." "That's fine," Samantha said. "You count." Before Leela could argue, Samantha took off running, laughing as she disappeared down the hall. Leela sighed and leaned against the wall. 1, 2, 3. She counted slower than necessary, giving Samantha time to find somewhere clever. When she reached 20, Leela pushed off the wall and started searching. Upstairs first, the bedroom, the bathroom, the closet, under the bed. Nothing. She went back downstairs, checking behind boxes and furniture. Still nothing. "Samantha," Leela called. "I'm not doing this all day." No answer. Then she reached the staircase. The stairs were plain wood, darkened with age, solid, normal. But Samantha loved clever hiding spots. Leela crouched and knocked on the wall beneath the stairs. The sound wasn't solid. It echoed. Her brow furrowed. She ran her fingers along the wall and felt it then. A thin seam in the paint. She pressed. A section of the wall clicked inward. A hidden door opened wide enough just for a child to crawl through. "Samantha?" Leela whispered. From the darkness inside came a quiet, excited breath. "I found something." Leela leaned closer. The space smelled like old cloth and dry wood. Samantha crawled out holding a bundle wrapped in yellow fabric. She unwrapped it slowly. A doll's face emerged. Porcelain smooth, glass eyes, a mouth painted into a soft, polite smile. Not cracked, not dusty, not abandoned. Samantha reached back inside and pulled out a second bundle. Another doll. Slightly larger, dark hair, a carefully stitched dress. They sat there on the floor, staring at them. "These are creepy," Leela said. Samantha nodded, but her voice was quiet. "They were hidden on purpose." She turned the smaller doll toward her. "It has freckles," she said. "Like me." Then she turned the other doll toward Leela. "And this one looks like you." Leela didn't like that at all. "We're telling Mom," she said. Samantha hesitated, just a second. "Can we keep them for now?" she asked. "Just until we figure out why they were hidden?" Leela didn't answer right away. She should have said no, but she didn't. They closed the hidden door under the stairs. The hallway went back to normal, and the dolls came upstairs with them. That night, Leela dreamed. She stood at the bottom of the staircase. The house was dim, like all the lights had been turned down. The dolls sat on the steps, side by side, hands folded neatly in their laps. They didn't move, but Leela knew they were watching her. A voice formed inside her mind, calm, gentle. "Thank you for finding us." Her heart pounded. She tried to step back. She couldn't move. "We were forgotten." The dream shifted. She saw her parents at the kitchen table, tired and quiet. Samantha sitting alone in a classroom, trying not to look small. "You want to keep them safe." Leela felt tears sting her eyes. Yes, she thought. "We can help." She woke up gasping. In the morning, Samantha sat at the table, cereal untouched. "They talked to you too," Samantha said quietly. Leela froze. "You had the dream?" Samantha nodded. "They were nice." That was how it started. The dreams came again and again. The dolls never shouted, never threatened. They spoke politely, carefully. They said they were helpers. They said families sometimes needed help staying together. They called what they taught the girls a game. The game came in pieces. First, chalk. Small circles drawn near doors, lines under windows, shapes hidden where adults wouldn't notice. The dolls called them rules of placement. They help keep things in, Samantha explained, drawing carefully. Good things. Leela watched uneasily. "The dolls told you to?" she said. "They suggested it," Samantha replied. The dolls praised Samantha often. "You listen so well. You were meant to find us." They spoke to Leela differently. "You're careful. We need that too." Slowly they introduced something bigger. A family circle. A ritual to bind the family together. Leela asked what it really did. The dolls paused before answering. "It prepares the bodies." That word lodged in her chest like a splinter. The dolls didn't confess outright. They let Leela piece it together. They spoke about being trapped, about being unfinished, and how their own bodies were gone. "We need grown bodies," they finally admitted. "Children grow, adults last. Leela whispered, horrified, "You want our parents?" "Only their bodies," the dolls replied gently. "They will still love you." Samantha cried with relief. Leela felt sick. The dolls chose the night. Family game night. Candles, a chalk circle large enough for 4, hands held. Aaron and Kyle laughed. They thought it was harmless, just a game. When the words were spoken, the air changed. Something pulled. Something slid. Aaron grasped. Kyle shuddered. The dolls' souls moved, quietly, cleanly. When the candles went out, the dolls lay still, empty. The parents stood, smiling. The dolls were gone. The parents were different. Not wrong enough to scream, just practiced. They watched themselves in the mirrors. They spoke carefully. They smiled a little too long. Samantha was happy. "It worked," she said. Weeks later, Leela found the dolls in Samantha's closet. They were warm, and inside them, faint but unmistakable, she heard her parents' voices. Waiting downstairs, her parents called her name, smiling, learning. Leela stood in the hallway, holding the dolls, and understood the final rule of the game. The dolls didn't steal families. They replaced them. And once they learned how to live inside people, they never needed to hide again. The first time the police decided Rachel Carter was lying, it was because of her hands. Not because they shook, not because her wrists were bruised with dark raw rings like someone had hung her from a wall, but because she kept clenching her fists as if she could still feel the iron. She sat under fluorescent lights that made every face look tired and pale, even the officers. Her 2 sons sat beside her, pressed close together like they were trying to become one person. Logan's knee bounced so hard the chair leg rattled. Noah stared at the floor and barely blinked. Rachel repeated the same sentence over and over like her mouth couldn't move past it. "He's still down there." The translator said it in Spanish. The officer nodded. Then the officer looked away and exhaled. The second time they decided she was crazy was when she told them where. "In the jungle," Rachel said. "Near the pyramids. There's a trail, like a shortcut, but it isn't on the map. There's a house. You knock and..." She stopped. She swallowed the sound that wanted to become a sob. Logan lifted his head, eyes glassy with fury. "It's real. We were there. We saw it." The officers exchanged a look that wasn't cruel. It was worse. It was the look people give you when they've already chosen the story you're in, and it isn't yours. Rachel leaned forward, voice cracking. "Please, you have to go now. You have to go before she moves him." The translator repeated it. The officer nodded again, slower this time, and asked a question that landed like a slap. "Where is your husband's passport?" Rachel blinked. "What?" "His phone, his wallet, his ID." Rachel opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. She looked down at her own hands. Empty. Her throat tightened because she understood what he was thinking. Not witch, not cellar, not a door that went black. He was thinking argument, fight, abandonment. Another tourist story where someone disappears. Logan stood too fast, chair scraping. "We didn't do anything to him." A hand went to a holster, not threatening, just reflex. Rachel grabbed Logan's wrist and pulled him down. "Stop," she whispered. "Please." The room hummed with disbelief and air conditioning, and somewhere far from fluorescent lights, a cellar door stayed shut, and someone was still breathing in the dark. This is what happened to the Carters, and why even now, when Rachel hears a knock, her blood turns cold. 2 days earlier, the air in the Yucatan had weight. Not just heat, but something living, like the sky leaned down and pressed a warm palm to your shoulders. Rachel tried to love it anyway. They needed this trip. David had been working too much, the boys were growing up too fast. Family vacations were starting to feel like something you had to fight for, schedule for, and protect. David protected everything with planning. Printed tickets, backup batteries, water bottles, bug spray. He practiced Spanish phrases in the mirror like he was going into an exam. Rachel teased him about it affectionately, because she loved him most when he was trying to prepare for a world that never promised it would cooperate. Their boys teased him too. Logan, 16, tall and restless, acted like boredom was an insult someone had thrown at him. Noah, 14, still had curiosity in his bones. The kind teenagers usually lose once fear teaches them to stop looking too closely. Their first night was normal. Tacos from a small place near the beach, music drifting through warm air, the feeling of a world that wasn't theirs but still welcomed them. Rachel watched David smile and thought, "This is why we came." The next morning they left early for the pyramids. David carried their supplies like he was escorting a small team through hostile territory. "Everyone stays together," he says as they enter the tourist area. "We see the site, we take pictures, and we do not wander into the jungle like we're in a movie." Logan smirked. "Wow, spoil sport." Noah held up his phone, recording. "This is going on my story." Rachel squeezed Noah's shoulders. "Just don't drop it." The place was breathtaking. Stone rising from green, history pressing up through the ground like something stubborn that refused to be forgotten. Rachel listened to the guide and tried to imagine hands shaping that stone centuries ago. Logan pretended he wasn't impressed, but his eyes kept drifting upward when he thought no one was looking. Noah was the one who noticed the narrow trail splitting from the edge of the tourist zone. "Mom," he said, pointing. "Look." No sign, no rope barrier, but the dirt looked packed, like feet had pressed there often enough to make it seem legitimate. Rachel frowned. "That's not part of our tour." Noah's eyes shone. "It looks like a shortcut. Closer. Less people." David heard and immediately shook his head. "No." Logan perked up like someone had offered him trouble. "Why not?" "Because it isn't marked," David said. "Because there's a reason it isn't marked." And Noah made a face. "Dad, it's right there. Just for a minute." Rachel hesitated. Not because she thought it was safe. Because she saw Noah's hope. That little sparkle that said, this could be a memory. She looked at David. "Just a few minutes. We stay together. If it feels wrong, we turn around." David stared like she'd betrayed him. Then sighed the sigh of a man walking into something he already knows he'll regret. "Fine," he said. 5 minutes. Noah grinned, and Logan laughed. And they stepped off the path and into the trees. At first, it felt like relief. Shade, cooler air, sunlight filtering through leaves in broken patterns like stained glass. The crowd noise faded. Rachel almost relaxed, and then the sound changed. Not suddenly, subtly. The bird song thinned. The insect noise became a uniform hiss like static. Logan glanced back. "We still close to the entrance?" David checked his phone. "Yeah, we're fine." The GPS arrow on the screen spun once, then spun again. Logan's phone dimmed. Noah's too. David muttered, "I charged these." Rachel's skin prickled. "David, let's go back." David nodded. "Okay, we turn around." So they turned. and the trail behind them looked wrong. Not dramatically different, just wrong in tiny ways. A fallen branch where there hadn't been one, pale flowers on the opposite side, a bend that felt sharper than it should. Rachel tried to keep her voice light. Okay, fun detour, now we go back. Noah didn't laugh. He was very quiet. Mom, he whispered. Do you smell that? Rachel inhaled. Sweet, not floral sweet. Sweet like sugar about to burn. Sweet like milk left out too long. David's jaw tightened. Keep moving. They rounded a bend and the trees opened into a small clearing, and there it was. A small house, crooked roof, dark windows, no garden, no road, nothing that explained it. Rachel stopped. Logan whispered, What the hell? Noah said, almost reverent, Someone lives here. David's voice was tight. No one lives here. Rachel grabbed David's arm. We shouldn't. But David stepped forward anyway, because fear makes people cling to explanations. A house meant people. People meant directions. Directions meant safety. On the door was a symbol scratched into the wood. A circle with lines through it, like a sun crossed out. Rachel's skin prickled harder. Logan hung back. Dad, don't. David lifted his hand. Rachel opened her mouth to stop him. David knocked. The sound was wrong. Not loud, not sharp. It died too quickly, like the air swallowed it. David knocked again, harder. The door shifted slightly in its frame, the way old wood does in heat and humidity. Rachel whispered, David. The light dimmed. Then darkness rolled out from the doorway in a smooth wave, silent and thick like ink and water. Rachel's last clear image was Logan's face, wide-eyed with sudden terror. Noah reaching for a hand. David turning with his mouth open to shout. Then the world went out like a switch. Rachel woke up to pain first, then cold. Iron cuffs bit her wrists. Chains pulled her arms overhead. Stone pressed damp against her back. The air smelled of earth, mold, and something faintly sour beneath it. Mom? Noah's voice cracked in the dark. Rachel's throat tightened with relief. I'm here. Logan groaned. My arms. Jesus. David's breathing came from the far corner, heavy and uneven. Rachel? Boys? Rachel swallowed. We're here. We're together. A thin line of light cut down from above, coming from a crack under a door at the top of the stairs. A cellar. Rachel's stomach turned. She looked at the walls. Scratches, names, dates, words carved into stone with nails or desperation. Some in Spanish, some in English. One phrase repeated in multiple handwritings. Don't look into her eyes. Noah whispered, trembling. Why would someone write that? Footsteps sounded above them. Slow, deliberate. The cellar door opened. Yellow lantern light spilled down the stairs. A woman descended. Older, thin, hair braided tight. A plain dress stained at the hem with jungle mud. Not theoretical, not obvious. But the moment she entered, Rachel felt it. A pressure in the air. A wrongness that made her skin prickle and her teeth ache. The woman carried a small bowl, dark inside, and a bundle of dried herbs tied with string. She spoke. Not Spanish, not English. The words felt heavy as if they pressed into the walls. Noah made a small sound, almost a whimper. Logan yanked his chains. Hey, let us out. The woman ignored him. She walked to David. Rachel's chest went tight. Please, she said. Please take me instead. The woman smiled gently, like Rachel had said something amusing. She dipped her fingers into the bowl and smeared the substance across David's forehead. Ash and oil. David jerked. Don't touch me. The woman leaned close and whispered into David's mouth. Not kissing, not biting. Whispering like a command needed to be breathed directly into him. David's body went rigid. His eyes widened, then seemed to empty, as if something inside him had been turned down. Rachel screamed his name. Logan roared and yanked so hard the ring in the wall squealed. Noah cried openly, voice breaking into begging. The woman placed her palm on David's chest. A faint shimmer lifted from David's skin like heat haze, but thicker. It looked like smoke, but it moved with intention. It flowed into the woman's hand, up her arm. She inhaled deeply, slow and satisfied. David sagged. His head drooped. His breathing turned shallow. Rachel choked on panic. David! David, stay with us! The woman stepped back. Then in Spanish, slow and clear, she said, I'm hungry. Her smile softened. And you walk so easily. Then she turned and climbed the stairs. The door shut. The light vanished. Dad's voice was thin. Rach, I'm cold. Rachel fought her chains until her wrists screamed. Hold on, hold on. Logan's voice shook with rage and fear. We have to kill her. Noah whimpered, small and broken. Mom, what do we do? Rachel forced herself to think like a mother instead of a person falling apart. She searched the ground with her feet. Something scraped under her shoe. She looked down. A rusty nail, bent, sharp enough. She nudged it closer and, with aching shoulders, grabbed it. She tested the cuff. A spring pin mechanism. Rachel whispered, I can pick this. Logan's breathing hitched. Do it. Rachel worked the nail into the pin channel, hands trembling. She froze twice when she thought she heard footsteps, holding her breath until her lungs burned. Then, click. Her cuff loosened. Rachel bit down on a sob and pulled her hand free. She moved quickly, quietly. Logan first. Click. Noah next. Click. They were free. They rushed to David. Rachel knelt down in front of him. David, I'm here. David's eyes fluttered. Don't leave. Rachel jammed the nail into his cuff. The mechanism resisted. She pushed harder. The nail bent. She tried again, and it snapped. The tip broke inside the lock. Rachel stared at the broken nail in her hand, heart dropping. Logan whispered, Mom, listen. Footsteps above. Noah's face drained of color. She's coming back. Rachel's mind went cold and sharp. They didn't have time to free David. If they stayed, the seller would take all of them. Rachel grabbed a broken pry bar from the pile of old belongings in the corner. Rusted, but solid. Logan tore a loose stone from the wall, edge sharp. Noah picked up the lantern, heavy, knuckles white around the handle. Rachel whispered, Noah, go for the keys. She has keys. Noah nodded, terrified. The cellar door creaked open. Lantern light poured down again. The woman descended. She stopped at the bottom step when she saw the freed cuffs and broken chain. Her calm flickered. Her smile sharpened. She spoke in that strange language again. Rachel felt pressure in her chest, like invisible hands squeezing her lungs. Logan tried to move and stumbled as if the floor had turned sticky. Noah's eyes widened in panic. Rachel reacted on instinct. She swung the pry bar into the lantern. Glass shattered. Light died. Darkness slammed down. Then the pressure eased. The woman hissed, harsh and furious. Logan surged forward and slammed into her. Rachel struck her shoulder with the pry bar. A dull thud. A scream. Noah lunged low, hands searching at the woman's waist. His fingers hit metal. Keys. He yanked. The keyring came free with a hard jerk. The woman's head snapped toward him. Rachel caught the glint of her eyes and shouted, "Noah, don't look at her!" Noah flinched like waking from a trance and scrambled back. The woman spoke louder, and the shadows shifted in a way that made Rachel's stomach drop, like the air itself was obeying. Rachel felt a tug in her chest, like a hook catching. Logan slammed the stone down onto the woman's hand. She shrieked. Noah dashed to David and fumbled keys into the cuff lock, hands shaking so badly the metal clinked like teeth. One key didn't fit. Another key didn't fit. Another. Rachel kept the woman back with the pry bar, swinging wide, refusing to let her close the distance again. Logan grappled and shoved, face twisted with fear and rage. Noah found the right key. The lock turned. Click. The cuff loosened. Rachel's heart leapt. Then the mechanism stuck. It wouldn't open cleanly. Noah pulled harder. David cried out, pain bright and sudden. The woman lunged toward them. Rachel slammed the pry bar into her ribs. The woman staggered but didn't fall. Her mouth opened and her voice became hunger-given sound. Rachel looked at David, chained, weak, alive but fading. David forced his head up, eyes pleading. "Rachel, go." "No," Rachel choked. "No." David's voice was thin but absolute. "She'll take you. She'll take the boys. Promise me." Logan's voice cracked. "Dad." David swallowed like it hurt. "Promise." Rachel felt her soul split. Logan grabbed Rachel's arm, shaking his head, begging her without words. Noah's tears streamed. "Mom, we have to." Rachel backed away, choking on grief. She grabbed the keys from Noah. She stared at David's face, trying to memorize every detail. David whispered, "Run." Rachel swung the pry bar one last time, forcing the woman back. And then she turned. She ran up the stairs with Logan and Noah. They slammed the cellar door shut behind them. Rachel shoved keys into the lock and turned. From below, David screamed. Not once. Again. A sound that turned Rachel's knees to water. Logan grabbed her shoulders. "Mom, move." Noah sobbed, stumbling forward. The old floorboards creaked beneath their feet as they ran, the building settling and groaning the way old structures do. Rachel ran into the daylight, into the jungle, into a world that suddenly felt too bright to hold what they'd just done. They ran until their lungs burned and their legs shook. Rachel had no direction, only the instinct to put distance between them and the woman down there. Vines snagged their clothes, roots tried to trip them, branches scratched skin raw. Noah cried as he ran, a broken, breathless sound. Logan kept glancing back, expecting to see her braid, her lantern, her silhouette between the trees. Rachel clutched the pry bar in one hand and the keys in the other. She wanted to throw the keys away, but she couldn't. Keys meant cellar. Cellar meant David. After what felt like forever, they burst into a clearing. Rachel stopped so hard she almost fell, because the clearing was familiar. Pale flowers, the half-buried rock that looked like a face, the bend in the trail. Logan stared, horror crawling across his expression. No. No way. Noah's voice shook. "We're back." Rachel's stomach dropped. The trail had looped them, not naturally, intentionally, like someone kept guiding them in circles. Noah whispered, "Do you hear that?" Rachel listened. At first, nothing. Then, faintly as if the sound was coming from inside the dirt, a voice. David's voice. "Rachel." Rachel's heart stopped. She spun, eyes scanning the trees. Logan grabbed her arm hard. "Mom, no." Noah sobbed. "That's Dad." The voice came again, closer. "Help." Rachel's body tried to move toward it like a magnet pulling iron. Her foot shifted. Logan shook her. "That's not him. It's bait." Rachel's throat tightened. "It sounds like him." Logan's voice broke with anger and grief. "That's the point." Rachel forced her eyes shut and spoke through clenched teeth. "That is not your father." Noah whimpered. "Mom." Rachel opened her eyes and looked at her sons. "Listen to me," she said, trembling but fierce. "If we go back, she takes us too. Then no one is left to bring help. No one is left to fight." The voice whispered again. "Rachel." So close Rachel felt cold brush the back of her neck like a breath. She whirled. Nothing. But the shadows between trees looked heavier now. Logan hissed, "Run." They ran again, and this time Rachel focused on one thing: human signs. Trash, rope, a post, a barrier, anything. Noah stumbled and cried out when something cut his leg. Rachel didn't stop. She couldn't. Not when the sweetness returned in the air. That burning sugar smell that made her stomach flip. Not when she heard soft footsteps behind them that didn't match their rhythm. Not when Logan whispered, voice strangled, "Mom, I hear her." Rachel didn't look back. She refused. They crashed through brush and nearly fell over a rope barrier, a marked tourist path. The world snapped back into normal sound. Real insects, birds, voices. A tour group rounded a bend ahead, bright hats and cameras. Rachel staggered onto the path like she'd been yanked from a nightmare. Noah dropped to his knees, sobbing, clutching his bleeding leg. Logan shouted hoarse, "Help! Call the police!" People rushed in, startled, confused. A guide knelt by Noah and began asking rapid questions. Within minutes, security arrived, then police. Rachel tried to explain. She tried to shape the story into something that fit inside a human mind without breaking it. "A house," she said. "We got lost. We knocked. We woke up chained. There was a woman. She drained my husband. He's still down there." The translator repeated. The officer listened, patient, then asked about passports, phones, wallets, the usual anchors of truth. Rachel had none. Logan insisted, voice cracking. "We didn't leave him. We tried." Noah sobbed. "Please, please." Rachel held up the keys. "These are from the cellar. Please, go. He's alive." The officer examined them and handed them back, expression careful, not cruel. Tired. Like he wanted to help, but he didn't know how to step into the story Rachel was describing. A search was organized, not urgent in the way Rachel needed. They brought Rachel and the boys back to the edge of the tourist area. Rachel pointed with shaking hands. It was there, that trail. But in the brush there was no clear opening now. No packed dirt. No obvious path. The search team pushed into the trees anyway. They marked their route. They walked for nearly an hour. Rachel waited for the clearing, the house, the door. But the jungle only offered bend after bend, clearing after clearing that almost looked familiar but never matched exactly. They found no structure, no cellar door, no stairs, no proof. A guide spoke quietly to an officer. The officer's face tightened. The translator stepped closer to Rachel, voice gentle. "Sometimes," he said, "people panic. Heat, dehydration. You can see things." Rachel stared at him, shaking. "We didn't imagine the chains. We didn't imagine him screaming." The translator's eyes softened. "I believe you. I believe it," he said. That sentence hit Rachel like a blade. Logan exploded. "So what, you think we abandoned him?" The officer raised his hands, calming but already backing away from the story. They escorted the family back. They took a statement. They promised follow-ups, formal processes, more searching. Words. Only words. That night, Rachel sat in the hotel room and stared at her bruised wrists. Logan sat by the window like he expected the jungle to crawl through the glass. Noah lay under the blanket with wide open eyes. Rachel's phone rang with embassy numbers and hotel staff and official voices. But when Rachel closed her eyes, she saw only David's face, and the woman's still eyes. Rachel whispered to the dark, voice breaking and hard at the same time. "They think I'm crazy." Logan's jaw clenched. "Then we don't wait for them to believe us." Noah swallowed, trembling. "Mom, what do we do?" Rachel stared at the keys in her hand until her fingers cramped. Then she spoke, low and certain. "We don't knock again," she said. "Not ever." She inhaled slowly like she was trying to keep herself from shattering. "But we're not leaving him down there." Rachel turned off the light, and in the dark, the room felt too quiet. Like someone far away had heard her. Like someone far away had smiled. Because somewhere in the jungle, beneath the cellar door no one can find, a witch is still practicing her hunger. And one day, she'll want more. They searched the area for 3 days. They found the truck. They found the gear. They found blood soaked so deep into the ground it never washed out. They did not find the body. And before the 2 men who survived were allowed to leave, they were told only one thing: don't return. Because whatever took the 3rd man was still there. They say the trouble wasn't that the 3rd hiker disappeared. People disappear in the wilderness every year. Falls, exposure, predators, bad luck layered on top of worse decisions. That part the authorities know how to explain. The trouble was that everything else was found. The truck parked where it was supposed to be, the camp set up correctly, the gear laid out like the men expected to use it again. And out in that part of the country, when the land gives something back incomplete, it usually means it kept the rest. The story's been told 100 different ways since then, usually late at night, usually by someone who swears they heard it from someone closer to the truth. But the shape of it never changes. 3 hikers went into a restricted stretch of land where nuclear testing had once taken place. Only 2 came out. And whatever took the 3rd man was never officially named. The hikers weren't reckless. That detail matters because it's what keeps the story from being brushed aside. They weren't thrill seekers. They weren't chasing rumors or dares for internet fame. They were experienced, methodical, the kind of men who planned routes carefully and packed more water than they thought they'd need. They liked empty places. One of them collected old maps, not the kind you bought at gas stations, but declassified survey charts with faded grid lines and handwritten notes in the margins. He liked the maps best when they stopped explaining themselves, when roads bent away from blank spaces for no clear reason. Another had grown up in the woods. He knew how animals moved, how they sounded, how they behaved when something bigger shared their territory. He believed honestly that if you respected the land, it would usually let you pass. The 3rd man was quieter. He doesn't show up much in the retellings. Survivors often fade like that, especially when they don't talk afterward. They drove most of the day, following highways that narrowed into back roads, then into roads that felt forgotten on purpose. Cell service vanished without warning, the radio filled with static where stations should have been. The last town they passed through barely qualified as one. A single gas station, a general store, a few buildings that looked like they'd been standing there longer than anyone could remember why. Inside the gas station, the air smelled like dust and burnt coffee. The clerk behind the counter didn't smile. He watched the hikers the way people watch weather rolling in from a distance. When they mentioned where they were headed, his hand stopped moving mid-reach. He didn't tell them not to go. He didn't raise his voice. He just said quietly, "You won't find anything out there." They laughed it off, paid, and left. The clerk watched them through the window until their truck disappeared down the road. The site itself didn't announce its danger. That was the unsettling part. There were no fresh fences, no guard towers, no bold warning signs. Just land that looked subtly wrong. Trees thinned the farther they went, their trunks bending slightly away from certain patches of ground. Vegetation appeared in uneven clusters, thick in some places and completely absent in others. The soil darkened without explanation, cracked in patterns that didn't match heat or drought. One of the men carried a Geiger counter. When he switched it on, it clicked softly. Nothing alarming, just enough to remind them that the land remembered things people preferred to forget. They noticed the smell before anything else. Metallic, like wet iron. Later, neither survivor could quite describe it properly. It wasn't rot. It wasn't decay. It was sharper than that, cleaner, like something alive had bled into the ground long ago and never been washed away. They found the tracks near a dry wash. Bear tracks, huge, deep, but wrong. The toes stretched longer than they should have. The claws angled outward in a way that didn't match any known anatomy. The stride was wide and uneven, as if the animal carried weight where it shouldn't. What bothered them more than the tracks was the absence. No rabbit prints, no bird scratches, no signs of smaller animals crossing the wash. Just one set of tracks moving along through the land that should have been busy with life. They reached the bunker at dusk. Concrete, half buried in a slope. The entrance had collapsed inward like the structure had tried to seal itself shut. Rusted warning signs clung to the walls, their paint blistered and peeling. One phrase still showed through beneath the damage: biological variance. None of them could later explain why that phrase unsettled them more than any radiation warning ever could. They didn't go inside. That mattered. They camped a short distance away, downwind as best they could tell. Night fell quickly, the stars sharp overhead. No insects, no wind, no distant animal calls. Just silence. The hum started after dark. Low, steady, almost easy to miss at first. It wasn't a sound so much as a vibration. Something felt through the ground and into the chest, like a massive engine turning slowly beneath the earth. When the hum began, the Geiger counter clicked faster. Still not frantic, just eager. And then something changed. The air felt like it tightened. What little background noise still existed didn't fade away. It stopped. Not gradually. Instantly. Like the world itself had been muted. That was the moment the survivors later agreed on. The moment they realized the quiet they noticed before wasn't the silence. This was. The roar came next. Deep, pressurized, layered. Not a warning, a statement. Movement appeared at the tree line, a shape too tall, too broad. When their headlamps caught it, the thing stepped forward. At first it looked like a bear, then it stood. Its body was elongated, its spine hunched unnaturally. Patches of fur were missing, replaced by scarred, burned skin that reflected light dully. It stood upright, not rearing, standing. The thing tilted its head slowly, deliberately, as if examining them. When one of them shouted, the creature inhaled deeply. The smell intensified. Then it moved. What followed wasn't a chase. It was inevitability. The thing dropped to all fours and crossed the distance faster than anything that size should move. Its gait was wrong, joints bending where they shouldn't. One of the hikers ran first. He tripped once, and that was enough. The creature seized him effortlessly, lifting him off the ground. It didn't roar, it didn't thrash. It bit down once. The sound carried. The other two ran. They didn't stop until dawn, when the forest looked ordinary again, as if nothing had happened, as if it hadn't just rearranged 3 lives forever. Search teams found blood, equipment, signs of struggle. They did not find a body. The official explanation was a bear attack. Privately, those involved knew better. The search paused for hours when unmarked personnel arrived. When it resumed, dogs refused to track. Volunteers complained of headaches and nausea. The area was fenced. Years later, the fence was moved, then reinforced. The 2 survivors were told not to return. They were never asked to explain the hum, because the people asking questions already knew. And the detail that keeps the story alive, the part that always lowers voices around campfires, is this. The creature did not chase once it had taken someone. It stood at the tree line and watched the others leave, patient and still, like it understood time. So if you ever hike somewhere the map doesn't explain and the forest goes silent all at once, remember this story. When the earth hums beneath your feet, don't wait to understand it. Don't look for the source. Just leave. Because whatever lives in places like that doesn't need to chase you. It just needs you to stay long enough to belong to it. If this story stayed with you, it means you were listening the right way. Subscribe. More stories are waiting, and some of them are closer than you think. Until next time, don't assume the silence is empty. Good night.